so much, Colleen and Dr. Fine, and all of Evolve Security and Evolve Security Academy for giving me the honor of speaking and giving back to the community who gave me so much. My name is Megan Sajewski. I was in the fall 2020 cohort for the ESCP, and currently I am a senior ISO associate at Shellman.
Awesome. Well, you were in the COVID pandemic cohort, so that seems like a lifetime ago, but super excited to see what you've been doing since then. Before we even jump into your cybersecurity journey, can you talk a little bit about what you were doing before? Because, sometimes it's great to hear about people doing stuff completely different than cybersecurity, and then they can relate and be like, oh, I can do the same thing that Megan's doing.
Definitely. So before cybersecurity, I actually was in academia, and I knew I wanted to leave a professorship. I was doing a PhD at Yale, and I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go from English, art history, French. So I took a few different tries at multiple career paths. I was an art teacher, and then I got into technical writing. And from technical writing, I was working on 3D printing, 3D metal printing, and metal forming software. And that's where I really got interested in the technical side of writing, of working with clients, of interviewing. And when the pandemic hit, I knew I had to restructure because the technical writing positions I was looking at, that's where the budget cuts were happening. And lots of layoffs and not a lot of hires. So very thankful to take the Evolve boot camp. It was like the 1 week kind of trial, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So that's how I got into cyber. And before cyber, some yoga teaching, obviously, from the title of the talk. I'm still a yoga teacher, so it's not something I've done full time. Really, it's not like a sustainable career path, at least in Detroit. So that's kind of how I ended up in tech.
That's awesome. It's a really cool story to go from, like the arts basically to tech. That's awesome. You talk a little bit about, what drew you to cybersecurity and like what your path was. So once you fell in love with Evolve, like you said, what made you stick with it? Like, what was it about the industry that really pulled you in and you were like, oh, this is what I want to do?
So what drew me into the industry even further was the kindness and community-oriented nature of everyone I was meeting, from the questioning stage, talking to people in recruitment and admissions, and then having an interview with Dr. Fi. And it just like the dominoes kept lining up. And once we got into the more technical bits, working in the command line, and eventually getting to learn web application scanning and vulnerability testing a bit, I was able to expand my skill set so much and work with wonderful people. And that combination is such a gift of cyber.
100%. I feel like I hear that all the time about this industry, about the community. Like everyone's just willing to help each other, and it's something that's really special about the industry. And I think that's what makes a lot of people stick to it. So you said that you're a senior ISO, is that right?
Yeah, you can say ISO, ISO, either one.
Okay. And so if you could talk a little bit about what you do now, and then once we've gotten to that, I'd love to hear about like your transition into there. But if you could talk a little bit about like what your day-to-day looks like, and then we can jump into like your transition into it.
So the kind of overarching theme of my day-to-day as a senior ISO associate at Shellman is helping clients turn security into a strategic advantage within their own organization. And kind of day-to-day, what that kind of stacks out is client interviews for, 1 to how many hours it takes to get through the different clauses in Annex A of the ISO 27001 and 27002 standard. And since that is an international standard for organizations to certify themselves against, I get to work with people from all around the globe. And beyond the interview part of my day-to-day, there's a beautiful writing aspect, actually, kind of crafting the way that things are done in a company and certifying against the standard and And that's something that's great that I get to carry my language, writing, and critical thinking background. And then the teaching part of yoga into walkthroughs, which are like longer meetings of compliance where you're just kind of looking to certify against the standard what the company has in place. Beyond that, I'm an individual contributor right now, so I'm not managing any associates or experienced associates, but I do get to have a mentorship role. So that's pretty much the last part of my day to day. I am there for questions and focus on the more technical side of the ISO standard, which I really, really love.
And that's really cool to hear that, back in the day you wanted to do that technical writing and you're able to incorporate some aspect of that now. I know a lot of people want to know about what the transition was like going from an industry that, is completely different than what you do now. If you could talk about that journey, I know you took the boot camp, but what were some things that you learned and like some advice that you would give to people that are doing the same thing, like joining this industry that they had no experience in before?
So I can speak from what culturally it was like going from being a yoga teacher as kind of how I identified in the world, artist, yoga teacher,
Mm-hmm.
writer. Part of that is being able to share yourself fully and really connect with the people you're teaching, the people you're writing to, and sometimes that is giving a lot of your personal life out to the world. And what I really learned transitioning to cybersecurity is using the CIA triad to construct my professional persona, I guess. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So I take confidentiality really to heart, and I do like to keep work life boundaries and a balance. And in my professionalism, like what stays at work, what happens at work stays at work. So that's something transitioning from more arts kind of free flowing type of work to more structured, measured work is that I really hone in on confidentiality and respecting those boundaries in place as a professional. And then also, it just helps make my creative life more colorful and fun.
That's so interesting that you talk about the cultural differences because I feel like that sometimes gets lost. You kind of forget that, oh yeah, I was doing this thing that's completely, it's not just the job that's different. It's like the people that I'm around, the environment that I'm in is completely different. So that's such an interesting point. I want to get your insight on the job search because, we have a lot of people that come in and like we've talked about have no experience and then they go through the boot camp or they go through some sort of cybersecurity training and then you have to get a job. And I think that part is extremely daunting to people, rightfully so. I mean, it's a lot of work. So if you could talk about your job search a little bit and like what you learned from that process and tips that you have for people doing the same thing and going through the job search right now.
Yeah, so the job search is definitely a challenging piece of the transition from whatever you're doing before now into the cybersecurity industry. And having a career coach within the boot camp was essential to my success. It helped me craft my resume specifically to the types of jobs I was looking for, how to structure my answers to interview questions using the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result. And beyond that, I think the best piece of advice I can give is as soon as you start in the boot camp, look at the sections, and if any maybe top three like stand out to you just from reading topics, like reading the different sections, do some more research, look at just start looking at companies' job descriptions out there, sign up for different LinkedIn job postings, job boards. And then on top of that, the last piece, which not everyone can leverage, but if you do have people in your network that are even tech adjacent, they might have someone in their network who has a job opening or knows someone. So kind of using that 6 degrees of cybersecurity, Kevin Bacon type understanding, I think the job search can be a lot less daunting. I think it's really important to put joy in things that are scary. So that's why hopefully someone out there will find some value in what I just said.
I love that. I think that's a great perspective to have instead of going in fearful. I really like that. Before you got into the industry, so, like when you were just starting your journey at Evolve compared to now, did you envision what a career in the industry would be like? And does that match up to what you were expecting? Or is the reality of what you thought a career in the industry would be different than how you expected?
Definitely different. I was under the impression until I started the boot camp that so much of working in cyber would be coding. So I really thought I would have to become fluent in Python, at least one coding language to succeed. And I didn't really know there were governance, risk, and compliance positions out there that were not as technical, but still maintaining technical integrity and technical expertise. So that was really exciting. And even just public opinion when I tell people, oh, I'm a cyber, oh, or do you write in Python? Do you code? And it's really great to know and kind of share that knowledge that there are many options to take career in the umbrella of cyber.
Yes, definitely. There's so many different job titles out there, so many different paths that people can take. Great.
Really.
And what would you say are your favorite part about your job, and then, the most challenging part?
Let's see here. I love the company that I work for now. Super great people, like very just good people to work with, very ethical. Being in compliance, like having an ethical backbone is incredibly important. So I value that a lot. And the company has a female CEO of color, and I really enjoy her perspective and her modeling of women just busting through glass ceilings and making it seem effortless. And then I love my day to day. Like I love my setup. I love my big comfy chair that my company graciously sponsored with a new hire stipend. And I would say I enjoy showing up every day, which is a treat. Challenging pieces. I mean, I call auditing, so people on the call know that GRC, like one of the career paths is to be an auditor, either external or internal. And I'm an external auditor working in ISO against the ISO standards. So I've also often called it business dentistry. Like we're the dentists of business. Like everyone's excited to work with us pretty much, but you kind of have to get through an audit, get through an assessment or a certification to get where you want your business to be, whether working with other vendors, other companies, or just showing to your clients and customers that you have a great security posture. So with that said, some of it is really being patient, and it's not necessarily super challenging all the time, but sometimes I think having to rephrase a question a couple of times could be considered the most challenging aspect, because you have to think on your toes. And I actually enjoy that challenge because it's like a mind puzzle, or it's a word Rubik's cube. So when you finally get the question that lands, that's a great feeling.
That's awesome. And, like the challenges, I like how you say that it keeps you on your toes and it keeps things interesting because, sometimes the word challenge can be, scary, but I think it's important to be challenged, and that's how you push yourself and that's how you get better. We have a few more minutes here, so just want to fit in some last questions. Whenever we have these, we get a lot of questions about preparation for the industry and like when you're working through the boot camp, learning about cybersecurity in general. What was your experience during the preparation period? Do you have any tips about that? Extra work that you put in, resources, or anything that you did during the boot camp to help you get to where you are today?
Preparation is so key to having a successful career when transitioning, from apples to oranges, pretty much from, for me, yoga to cybersecurity. The most important part of my preparation was really connecting to my small group within the larger cohort, and within that smaller group, finding study buddies, being able to really craft personal and professional relationships with my classmates, and studying for the Sec Plus together, and having those meetups where you can bounce questions off of each other. And I think that's it's a good model for collaboration and a sense of, as I mentioned before, the community oriented nature of cyber, that having a mindset of being open and willing to give back and pay it forward and help out. I think that's one of the best ways you can prepare mentally. And then in terms of actual knowledge acquisition, I would say kind of plotting out what kind of certifications your dream job requires and starting to look into what those certifications involve.
Awesome. I mean, I think that's so helpful. I think everyone here will agree with me on that. But I think we are going to start wrapping up here soon. So, Megan, do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to share, or anything about your journey that you've learned that you think would be helpful for everyone else to know? I mean, you've shared a plethora of knowledge. So, if there's nothing else, totally fine. But anything else you would like to leave everyone with?
I think just personal growth and investing in yourself is sometimes a big leap of faith and can seem high risk. At the same time, like we have to make those investments and risks for ourselves to be able to achieve what we set out to do in life. And along the way, you'll meet great people. So if you're thinking like, is this going to pay off, or is this worth it? If you are at all lit up by cybersecurity, find it interesting, and you have like a spark of passion, then I would definitely say go for it, because I couldn't imagine how life would turn out 3 years ago. And I'm really glad I stuck with the program all the way through and continued in the industry and been able to level up to a place where I'm really happy where I'm at. So thanks to everyone involved.